We sang two of my favorites this morning. Huh?
Oh, and which reminds me, I'm gonna do. I guess it just involves us. I'm gonna set dates for our next hymn sings.
Oh, okay.
And I'll get them ready to go. And we had a good time. And as the days grow longer, I think more people will come because some of those ladies can't come if they're gonna drive at night. So anyway, all right. Thank you for indulging me. This is good.
Y'all are fine.
So
I just enjoy the conversation.
Now you take control of everything. You're going to talk the
You're in
whole
charge.
hour.
Go ahead.
Now let's go back to that discussion on purple. How about
On
that?
purple, yeah.
Let's do that on one day.
No, let's not. Please.
I think it'd be hilarious.
It would be, but I can't do it at this particular moment. Well, guys, welcome back to the Areopagus. If y'all are joining us today, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's get this out there to as many people as we can, so that we can share the word of Christ to all those who hear. Today is the second working episode of the Sermon on the Mount. If you watched last weeks, we discussed the Beatitudes. We kind of got held up on one, particularly rushed through one and went over with the last two verses or last three verses of that part. But I think the discussion was great. I think it went where it was supposed to go. So today we are going to...
Is that like a predestination of where it was supposed to go? Was that what that was? Predestination?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I can't reach him, so it's up to Scott.
I'm just gonna grin and shake my head. How about that?
Just nothing to see here. Move along. All right.
So in today's discussion, we are going to cover two sections, which contains, if I'm not mistaken, 17 verses or 7 verses. So it is real short. We are going to discuss the salt and light section, and then the Christ came to and fulfill the law. So I know that depending on your translation you have, the titles might be a little bit different. I was looking through my CSB this morning, and it's phrased a little bit different as you look through, but I'm looking through my ESV during this. So the two titles I have are Salt and Light, and then Christ came to fulfill the law. So that will be the two sections. Next week we will actually discuss 3 sections that go hand in hand. So that's kind of how I did these up. So I think it was with y'all too last week at the end. I kind of gave a preview of the Salt and Light, and I kind of mentioned that is he in your way?
No, I don't want to kick him.
Oh,
I get
can
excited.
move him.
I get excited when you
No,
talk
he's all right.
sometimes.
I was going to say, I can move him.
No.
The Spirit was moving you?
Yeah.
Or Jeremy was.
Mac is back. That is who we're talking about. He is beneath the desk. It has been a while since Mac has been here. But so on the whole salt and light part, I think I shared that I've never really understood the description he gives. I understand the premises of what salt does and is used for, and of course what light is used for. But as far as the implications or the implications that Christ used these in his preaching and his teaching, I've never given it much thought because it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me.
Or resonate.
Or resonate with them and me. So we'll break it down. We will do salt and then light, and then move on into the next part. So I will start with our scripture reading. We're in Matthew 5, Matthew 5, verse 13. And it says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet." So, I mean, I understand the purpose of salt, because back in first century times, they didn't have these wonderful things we like to call freezers or refrigerators. And so salt was used to preserve and to keep things fresh, which is a large reason why I don't eat steaks at Texas Roadhouse, because they salt cure their steaks, and I'm just not a huge fan of salt, so I can't eat their steaks. But I understand the purpose of salt.
Right.
It's the part that really stands out to me is, "But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored?" That's the part that I get stuck on.
Well, on mine, it talks about the salt. He's applying it to us, telling us how we are supposed to be. It's because you said right, salt, it acts as a preservative, flavoring. This in mine says melts coldness and heals wounds. There's a lot of applications.
Oh, there's a lot of applications of
So
salt.
in our life as Christians, we are more than just people walking around, right? We are to live by and as examples. So whatever we do is an example of Christ. So it's a constant, everyday living. And then that's what he's talking about. If it's lost its savor, in other words, if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, we're not going to be giving God the glory that he deserves. We're not going to be serving him in the capacity that we need to serve. That's the way I take it. It could be something. I hit the microphone, sorry. Okay. It could be something different, but from what my simple mind is understanding what he's talking about, because he just talked about blessed are those and this and that, and then he goes on and just starts to reiterate, okay, listen, this is how we're going to apply it. This is part of who we are, what we're supposed to be. You're, as a child of God, you are set apart. There's, we're not supposed to be, as we talked about in Romans, you're going to be transformed by the renewing of mind. So
Romans 12.
yeah.
Well, one of the things that one of the books that I've read, not too distant past, was about viewing Scripture through Western eyes as opposed to its original audience.
Mhm.
And so when I read the Beatitudes or a Sermon on the Mount, I think of Christ and I try to picture it in my head. He's talking to live, real people right there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling them, here's however many thousands. You are the salt of the earth. How are they going to receive that? He's not talking metaphorically necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking right there at this lady dressed in red, and that gentleman over there. You are the salt of the earth. How would they take that? And I think about Israel as a whole. They've been chosen. God has plucked them out. Why should he choose them? They're the least among the nations. Why should he choose them? Yet God, in his infinite mercy and wisdom and sovereignty, chose the people of Israel. And Jesus reiterated that, and he said, you are the salt of the earth. You're preserving the world. I mean, if we're talking about preservation, it's through Israel that we are preserved spiritually. Now, I'm not, as far as I know, I'm not related. I can't, trace any kind of history. But how would that? How would that impact them when he told them, "You're the salt of the earth"?
Well, I agree that's how we need to look at what Jesus is saying, because we need to understand the context in which Christ was speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was salt to these people? I mean, we go to the grocery store and we buy a big thing of it and pay almost nothing for it.
Right.
Okay.
Salt was probably one of the most expensive spices, I guess you could say, or
Well, actually,
preservatives.
right. I get tickled at people, who run around, and collect gold and silver and throw all that stuff in a safe and all that. And I laugh at them. The thing that you ought to be throwing in the safe is salt. Because if, everything goes sideways, salt will be as valuable as gold is.
Right.
And that's what it was in these days. Because salt, although it was common, I mean, right, you could get it, you could take, seawater and, let it dry out, and then you get the minerals that come out after the water evaporates, right? So, I mean, it was there, but if you live far enough from, the coast, you weren't going to get any. Right. So, or you had to import it in. Well, taking salt from the coast and bringing it inland, well, then people knew that there were some people that were rather mean that didn't know, that were going to hijack the salt thing as it was coming up, just like they did any other merchants.
Right.
Right. So one, I take it as, that there's a preservation here, but there's also a value, right? That these people are valuable, right? So there again, if we look back at the meekness, right? If we look back at some of the other things that in the Beatitudes that we're looking at, there again, I agree with John. What he's telling us is how to be as Christians. So when he talks about something that's ridiculous, right? He throws something in there that's ridiculous. Well, if salt loses its saltiness, well, let's think about that for a second. So what he's saying is, if salt becomes something that isn't salt, right, then really what that is nothing but something that we ought to spread on the road and trample over, right? It's dirt at this point, right? It's valueless. It has no worth. It has no ability to regenerate or to have any value. It's just dirt at that point.
And then I take another step in my head, and it's I think they would view this as it preserves life, it preserves the food, it preserves those other things that allow us to live and flourish.
Sure.
We're not a starving nation, and be that to other people. I know Israel became pretty insular, almost rightly so, because the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Greeks and the Romans didn't ever treat them real well, and the Egyptians, and
they didn't treat themselves very well either.
And that's true. But then you couple this in the sense of preserving with his next statement, which is, you are the light of the world. Okay, you're salt, you're light. So what did, in the same vein, how are those coupled, or what did light mean to them?
Well, I'll read that and we'll dive into it. So verses 14, 15, and 16, it says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So, so the light part makes more sense to me, and I think it goes back to being 3, 4, 5 years old, and this little light of mine,
Right.
I'm going to let it shine. And it really makes more sense to me now as I have begun to grow in my faith and mature in my faith and walk in my faith, that I have this light in me that Christ has given, and I have found a way to shine that light. In between this podcast, in between the TikTok stuff I've been messing around with, it boils down to I can no longer hide this light. It's going to shine, and what are people seeing in that?
Right.
And so
I think that's. Yeah, I will agree that this is probably easier for a Western mind to get the notion of,
right.
because there again we're comparing. He's making comparisons here, right? And he's saying some things that anybody would have gone, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, if there was a
City up on a hill, you're gonna
yeah,
see it.
Yeah,
I mean,
there ain't no way not to.
yeah.
Right. Unless you got your eyes closed or you're blind, right? All right. So, all right. And there again, you're not going to take a light, there again, we're talking about something that was precious to those people.
They didn't
Right.
have all this wonderful DC power and AC power and
Right. They didn't have it.
right.
So there again, I come back to light was a precious commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you're not gonna take that and put it under a basket. The reason why you have light is
To see.
to let it shine. Right.
Well, but I also go to this, agreed, but my mind still goes past down this road. The tabernacle,
Mhm.
and as they were coming across the desert for 40 years, you walked into that big tent, and what was on the left?
Big light.
Big light.
Mm-hmm.
And all those objects inside of that tent represented Christ.
Mhm.
People would come to learn that. And the two objects outside. But Jesus in John 8, that's what I was looking up. He also said, I am the light of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And, in other verses, that the people have seen a great light and those things. People would understand that light is precious, but if people can't preserve their light, I'm not talking about of their own power, but being salt. I guess I'm trying to link them together and grasping. I don't know. But Jesus said, you're set up on a hill. People are going to see it. Israel is the nation. I want them to see you. You are the one that I chose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what God wanted them to be. They wanted them to be the light of the world.
And
right?
preserve yourself. Be an example to folks. And do the things that are necessary to be that light, to preserve.
But they also didn't. They did put their light in a basket, and they did hold that real close to them like a teddy bear, that they were hugging. So I do believe that there might have been a little bit of needling that was going there with Christ, in the sense that you did these things. You were supposed to be that city on the hill, and you not. You did put your light under the basket, So I think that he is kind of in that regard. I do believe that he is needling them just a little bit,
So he's saying, you're the light of the world, and they go, oops.
Right. There again, and whether or not they're the salt too, I would argue that there again there may be a little bit of needling that's going in there because there again they were oppressed at this period of time. It wasn't 5 weeks after Solomon built his big temple and Israel was superpower of that region. We're talking about, that these were people that lived in the desert, lived in huts, were under the boot of Rome. I mean, thoroughly under the boot of Rome. Had kings that were put over them that were crooked and corrupt. There were even priests that were crooked and corrupt. So, there again, I believe that there's a little bit of needling that's going on here, and Jesus saying, don't do this.
So
right? This isn't how the new is going to be.
So saying that
Good.
got me thinking. Do you think that and this is just what came into my head, that the light portion could have been addressing, the masses there. You're supposed to be the chosen people. You're supposed to set the example, be set apart, shine in the darkness. Do you think this salt portion could have been directed more towards the Pharisees and the Sadducees?
There again,
because we know they were there.
Well, there again, his question that he asked about can salt lose its saltiness?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that seems rather a ridiculous question to ask when you're talking about somebody being salt, right? So how could salt not be salt?
Right.
So there again, I believe
but
that
you get into the Pharisees
right. I'm
part,
sure
and
that there were, and I'm sure that Christ knew that those cats were out there in the audience listening to what he said,
and that
again,
they're supposed to be these ones who are teaching and guiding and preserving this word that they've been given, and they're not.
Well,
they're more focused on
there again,
this can do for them.
Right. So there again, I'm looking. I know that we're cutting this up in sections just so we can talk about it.
Right.
But remember, this was one deal.
Yeah, this
right?
is one long speech.
So it has to somehow, the gears got to come together at some point. So what's he doing? Okay, well, the Beatitudes are obvious what he's talking about in there. Now, when we get in the next section that we're going to cover here is when we get to that next section, how does the next section tie into this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I try to look at this as a flow, not as a
breakdown,
right,
individual
right. So
breakdown.
he's making a point. So what's his point? Well, I think to the average person, to the man on the street, right? Okay, so to the man on the street, what he's saying is be salt, and you know what salt is, and be light. You know what light is. You know how important both of those things are to you.
Right.
So that ought to be important going forward. But I also think that he's needling.
And Wisdom and Shane would agree with you on that.
I think that he probably would.
And
yes.
that in some of his things, when he addresses his disciples or some of the people, he's like, okay, guys, come on, click here.
Right. Right.
So if he's saying, okay, be the salt, be these things. And so and the Pharisees are there, so he goes, if the salt has lost its flavor, and he looks over,
toss it out.
Is he looking right at him and saying,
I believe he would be.
Throw it on the road and trample it.
Right.
These people that you don't regard.
Right. Mm-hmm. I can't see how he's not.
I hadn't thought of it in that.
I can't see how he's not needling. But there again, I mean, I'm sure if I'm sure if I was to
Well-
go back and look at a bunch of commentaries, I'm sure that there'd be something in there about that too.
Okay,
So,
so I'm gonna. Shane's not here, so I'm having to use all his analogies here. So when you watch The Chosen, if you go through it, and when you see him preparing for the Sermon on the Mount, you women have him and Matthew, who's taking the notes and kind of keeping up and with what he's saying and talking about and this, that, and the other. Well, when you get right there towards the end of that, Matthew looks at him and looks at Christ, and along the lines ask, are you sure this is how you want to start this message? Are you sure you want to come out of the gate like this?
well, I mean, he makes some pretty bold statements after the light statement.
Right. And so,
I mean, and I guarantee you,
and
there were people
so-
that were going, "That rock's too small. I need to get this bigger rock." Because
and so it kind of makes
Well, hit him
more
good.
sense
Yeah.
when looking back and remembering that, if this is, we weren't there, we don't know what he
Right.
was thinking, or
we
where
don't
he
have
was.
that mindset. So I'm trying to put myself
but-
in that position.
But if you're correct, and he was preparing this message and was preparing to start here and start to jab all these
Well,
people,
I mean, eventually he calls them a brood of vipers.
right?
Right. I mean, to
So-
their face.
Yeah. So I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way. I mean, I don't see how
He's
it
kind of
doesn't
needling
make
him. I mean, there he any filter was gone.
sense. Yeah.
Right.
What you got, John? Were you about to say something? Oh,
I'm just saying it because I mean we ain't going through verse 20, but he goes on and refers to the scribes and Pharisees,
uh-huh.
And on the needling part, I mean I can understand on needling. If you ever speak truth and people that know truth, the guilt's gonna be there.
Right.
It's
And-
like there's no way of getting around. Okay, he's talking about me. I don't like that, and so,
I
what
don't
do they
call
say?
that guilt. I call that conviction, and that's why they get mad.
What do they say? You throw a rock into a pack of dogs. The one that yelps is the one that hits.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. So you truth is out there,
Right.
and it's not that they didn't know it. It's just that there's a lot of people even these days. They know the truth. They know how they're supposed to live. They know what God's word says they do, but they don't abide by it
Mhm.
because there's nobody really calling them out upon it. Right. I mean, we live in a world of
And when they
of-
do get called out on it in our current culture, they play the victim card and then get everything else stirred up. But sorry to
No, that's all right. But I mean, we understand that these are, like you said, they're real people. He's talking to real people and talking about real things that are a part of their life to help them understand. And there are people even today. I believe that even go to church that know. I don't know what they do Monday through Saturday. We may not want to know what they do.
Right.
But they come Sunday and they want to hear something good about themselves so we can feel good. But see,
Have their ears tickled.
Yeah, have their ears tickled. But Jesus spoke the truth. He didn't sugarcoat it or anything like that. So there was not a way of escape for them. I'm sure there were people in there, well, I wish Joe was here. He needed to hear this. But it was really about them,
Yeah.
But all of it is for at the end of verse 14 or 16 when it says to glorify our Father which is in heaven. That's why we
Right.
that's why we do all these things. That's why we're who we are. That's why we help people or we have compassion and all that is to give God the glory. He deserves it.
Right,
So
and
when
to
we-
not boast in what we do.
Yeah.
That it all goes to Christ.
So when we close this podcast off, are we going to sing "This Little Light of Mine"?
I was thinking about it. I was, but no.
The studio audience wants to hear it. That's
No,
right.
I doubt it. You can. I've heard you
Yeah.
sing. So if you want to sing it, I'll give you the floor. But I don't know if I should partake in that. So moving into the next section, and because you said, this is all one big sermon. I mean, so yes, we break it down here to go through it in a timely manner, not spend 5 hours on one section. But so I'll read the next part, and we'll go into that and how it goes back into the salt and light and the Beatitudes, and then what's coming forward too. So this starts it's verse 17 through 20. My section, like I said, says Christ came to fulfill the law. It says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven."
Well, and there again, if that last sentence wasn't a dig, I don't know what was.
Yeah, that was a jab.
I don't. But there again, I see these little digs, I see these little pokes, I see these little jabs, all through that. Now I say that because I really don't know what other word to use for it. I think there again, if he was talking to the crowd, I'm sure he knew the leaders that were out there. He knew the head rabbis. He knew the he knew the people that were out there in that crowd. I mean, there again, he wasn't far from where he grew up. You know, he wasn't far from the people that he would have known personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he knew who was out there. But yeah, I mean, if I look at that last sentence, for I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds, because these people thought that they were,
hot snot.
right, exactly, right. So if he did,
Both the warm or cold.
right,
I don't know.
That was the nice thing, and that
I was
came
trying to
into
think of-
mind.
I was trying to think of something nice to say myself, and I wasn't finding the words.
All that in a bag of potato chips. That's
Right. So anyways, I mean,
have those.
I see these little things in here. Now, there again, maybe I'm making a little bit too big of a deal out of it, but I can't not think of other things that Christ says about them and about the way that they took what God had purposed for them
Right.
and and absolutely jacked it up. I mean, by the time we're talking about first century Judea and the Jewish, I mean, it was as corrupt as it had ever been.
Right.
I mean, ever. It was as far away from what God had wanted them to be as they possibly could have been.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because, I mean, he went on what, a 400-year give or take hiatus and just let them be as they would want to be for 400 years. Didn't talk to nobody, didn't do nothing, just was like, okay, let's see. Let's just see what happens.
Play this out. Yeah. Right. Well, but there again, and I think Christ makes some bold statements
Mhm.
in the first part of this too. I mean, he's making some claims now. He hasn't. I don't think that this would be one of the passages that anybody would say that he claimed to be God. But this is pretty close to him saying that I'm God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law.
Right.
And so,
and he also throws the prophets in there too. So we got to be.
But he knows that these guys know the Old Testament, because when he says, I came to fulfill them, well, there's multiple prophecies in Isaiah, wherever you want to look, it's going to say the Messiah is going to come.
Right.
He's going to fulfill these things. He's going to be doing these things.
right.
He says, I came to fulfill it. If he means the whole law, it's tantamount to saying, I am, as he did in another place.
Well, so just because I'm going to ask this question, by him saying I came to fulfill the law, is he talking about the 10 that God gave to Moses that covers everything, and because when you get more along in Matthew, he breaks the commandments down into 2.
Mm-hmm.
Or is he talking about the 630 something laws that had been developed throughout 1,000+ years to cover these 10 laws, to expand on these 10?
Well,
I mean,
I don't know that he's covering the Pharisaic self, how to be a good Pharisee laws. I think he's covering the Pentateuch. It's just me, which obviously would be the 10 Commandments and all those other things in there, and what the prophets said. He's talking about the whole thing, and because we see Jesus everywhere, this Old Testament points right to him, and he's letting folks know. But Jesus also understands the mindset of the day when this crowd, the same crowd that he's talking to, that he just said, "You're the salt, you're the light." This same bunch, they also knew the history. They also knew their relationship in the temple, that whole process. They knew these things too, and they knew about a Messiah, and they were looking for that cat to get there, and they wanted him there to get rid of the Romans.
Right.
But Jesus.
It's also the same group of people that one day he came into town and they're screaming, "Hosanna, Hosanna," and then 5 days later they're screaming, "Crucify, crucify." So,
they could be a fickle group.
very fickle.
they could be fickle.
Caught you on a bad day. Crucifying. All right.
So,
well, yeah, but there again, I've wondered about some of this. This is one of the places in the Sermon on the Mount where I can get hung up pretty easily. There's some things about it that I understand. In my mind, if you're the fulfillment of the law, right? And maybe I'm thinking about this. I'm the standard of that law, right?
And two, this is at the start of his ministry too.
Right. So he could still stub his toe.
So
right.
So he hasn't really done a whole lot up to this point. I mean,
well, and
one or two things prior to this.
Well, and I guess
and
by
those
this
were
point,
behind closed doors.
Right. He's already talked to the woman at the well. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He's already made some wine out of water at the wedding.
Right.
So yeah, I would agree that that this is pretty early on, and I've always wondered if this is a foreshadowing, which is where I was getting at. So I think that there was some standard about this that like you said, you can go back and look at the Old Testament and every place where it said, that he's going to be here, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think the fulfillment of the prophecy is pretty easy to grasp. To me, the fulfillment of the law was something that I always got puzzled about.
Okay.
That would leave me scratching my head if I thought about it deep enough. Because there again, if he fulfills it, what is that? How do you fulfill a law? I guess it's in his perfection.
He kept it.
He
Right.
kept it. Right.
Right.
He kept
It's in his perfection of his life, right?
Mhm.
Which is which is ultimately where I sat on his fulfillment of the law. Well, he was the only one that was ever
How many
able
did you
to
say
do
there
it.
were? 600?
630 something Jewish laws. I mean, and
Right.
throughout 1200-ish years, they kept adding laws and adding
Right.
laws to
Well, I didn't break none of them.
Right.
What's wrong with you?
I'm just saying.
so
No,
what
I will
comes
say
into-
now, verse 18 to me, that any Bible translation ought to translate it into King James because it should say a jot or a tittle, right? So,
Those are great words. I love.
I
it.
know.
I remember
I know.
memorizing that.
Right,
Not a jot or a tittle.
right.
Is that really what it says? Let me see.
Yes, jot or a
Jot.
tittle.
Or until.
Tittle. Yep.
And those remarks in Jewish
Right.
Jewish writing,
Mhm.
Right.
and they were tiny, tiny,
Right.
the smallest mark.
Right.
In there, none of that's going to pass away.
Right.
He's going to fulfill it.
That's something.
Whether it's Isaiah 53,
Jot
he's
or
going
a
to be
tittle.
hanging on a tree.
Right.
An iota, not a dot.
Right. Right. Well, there again, iota.
Jot,
Yeah.
Right.
J-O-T,
Yeah.
jot or tittle.
But iota isn't very big in
No.
Greek.
Yeah.
So I mean, the point is still there. A dot, you can kind of get the idea, but a jot or a tittle just sounds a whole lot more
It does.
romantic.
It does. It really does.
Speaks well.
Yeah, it
I like
it
that.
flows
It
off the
lands.
tongue,
That's right.
and yeah, kind of needs to go there. But there again, when I think of well, then that law is still there, right, shining on us, and it's not going to go away until all of this goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a standard there that God has for us, right?
Right.
So to me, that always gave me some comfort that, okay, well, I came to fulfill the law, which, there again, I can place several things on that fulfillment, but
Starting with his birth.
yeah,
You know?
Right.
right. So, and also that law is still there, right? So I'm not off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not off the hook at all. I'm still in the same position that I was before he started doing this, that I was after he made this speech, right? I'm a sinner needing a savior.
Right. So the prophets part, and if I would have thought about the separation of the two as you and them as y'all have described, I would have looked up the video or the statistics on it. There was a professor, I don't know, mid 1900s, somewhere around there, that had his, I forget what class it was, but it was all these calculations and different things like that, and they worked out the calculations of, well, if Jesus fulfilled just one of the prophecies,
Right.
well, if Jesus fulfilled 5, what it was like 10 to the 17th power.
Right.
If he fulfilled 8, 10, 15 of the 380 something prophecies that are mentioned throughout what we call the Old Testament, but the Hebrew Bible, there's over 300 prophecies. And for him just to fulfill 3 of those was like 10 to the 17th power.
Right.
I mean, that's insane odds.
Right. Right.
And then for him to fulfill every prophecy said about him from Genesis 3 to the end of Malachi it can only be through divine nature
Right.
that could happen.
Right. There is no accident.
No. But yeah, I never
Well, there
even
again,
thought
I mean,
about to
Right.
separate the law from the prophecies, because those are 2 completely separate things.
Right. Right, and he makes the distinction with
Mhm.
the or,
Yes.
and he does use in the Greek the article is there, so the is there in both instances.
Note on that, just because that
So
one word, that distinction, or
right, and there again the article is there, so it
Mhm.
isn't a law
the
or
law,
a prophet.
the prophets.
Right.
Yeah.
So the article the article is there. So it isn't a generic. Right.
hmm
And that's most of the reason I think even in the King James they capitalize law and prophet.
Yeah, it's capitalized in the ESV.
Right.
That's not in this one.
It didn't. Okay.
Not in my version of it.
Well,
Well, because
King
it's a
James,
proper-
the King James.
Yeah, it's a proper it's a proper name, so it would be capitalized.
Yes, it's not capitalized, okay?
The
Well,
end
so
all
James
be all right here.
yeah, so James got that part of it wrong, right? So can't fault him for everything. And there again, I think that I've mentioned about the fact that it stands there. That law still is there.
Yeah. And so I like the word that you chose. He kept the law. Fulfillment, you would think the law goes away
Right.
in the way our brains would work,
Right.
but kept in my brain makes more sense, because he was God, so he couldn't serve another God. He couldn't put any other gods before himself. He couldn't have idols. He honored his mother and father. He didn't envy. He didn't covet. He didn't commit adultery. He didn't commit murder. So he kept the laws and the way they were given. And then whichever other ones that they threw in there, that he said, well, just because it's there, I'm going to show you.
Well, there's a bunch, and I just flipped back through here and just looked at numbers and looked at a couple of just little spot looking things. He kept it, and just amazingly, and in God's sovereign will, He kept them so that He could become the Lamb of God. He could become that sacrifice. He could fulfill the sacrificial system. He could rip open that veil that stood between man and God and the mercy seat. And
Isn't Leviticus and Deuteronomy primarily the laws given?
Well, Deuteronomy is a recapitulation of essentially all the history up to that point.
Okay, so
there-
it's-
that's
and
the
so
reason why
it's
you see
and so it's Leviticus
That the law
That
was actually given.
given. Oh,
Well, see, like
okay.
here's just,
Deuteronomy is called a treatise.
Okay.
and I just
That's what it would be.
I just looked at random, like the rules of, or in the law of Passover, and what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
The Feast of Weeks in Deuteronomy 16, chapter 16, verse 9. You shall count 7 weeks, begin to count, etc., etc. Here's what you do. The Feast of Booths talks about justice. You know, Jesus kept all those.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it says here, you shall appoint judges and officers in your towns that the Lord your God is giving you according to your tribes. How did Jesus keep that? I mean, I don't know. He didn't break it. But, and here's some forbidden forms of worship.
Yeah, and because by the first century there weren't any more tribes per se. I
There
mean,
weren't judges.
and there were
Well,
bloodlines still there, but they weren't divided up into tribes.
Well, there again, Judea and Benjamin were the only ones that really
Was that talking
survived.
about
Right.
authority?
Right.
They're respecting authority?
But whatever form it took, he kept it
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar.
and
God.
honored it. Yeah.
So, obey.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. He does address that when he's asked about and about taxes. You know, he goes, "Whose face is on this coin? We'll give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's."
Right.
So, I mean, there is an authoritative and
Obedience.
obedience there to more than just God the Father, even though we might not agree with our current ruling power, we still owe a form of obedience to them because of that level of hierarchy, I guess you would call it, authority. So, okay.
Well, and remember, the laws were broken down essentially into 3 different categories, right? You had the moral law, the civic law, and the ceremonial law, right?
Yeah,
so it wasn't. I don't know when he talks about the law whether he's talking about,
Okay.
you know, like
Speaking
the
of
civic
that, I
or
heard.
ceremonial laws. I wouldn't.
Well,
I mean, he
I
probably
think the
was clean and all
ceremonial
that,
law was in part in part that he was the perfect lamb,
right.
And then
The
the civil
ceremonial
law-
laws pointed to him.
Right.
Yes.
and
So-
then the civil law. I think I'm the only law we still have to deal with today is the moral law.
That's correct. That's correct.
So-
So I think it was the moral in there again. I think that the ceremonial law was more that he fulfilled it, right?
Mhm.
That he was
And the
fulfillment.
prophecies of
Right.
it.
Right. So I don't. Yeah. I mean, he was morally perfect too.
Right.
So
Jesus didn't have to go and offer lambs and doves and pigeons and stuff like that.
Well, we don't. You bring up a good point, and I've thought about that myself. That we never hear of Jesus doing those things.
Mhm.
We now that doesn't, there again, from silence that doesn't mean anything necessarily, right? And it would be a logical fallacy to claim that he didn't. We just don't know
We just don't know.
if he did. Now
And there were other forms of worship in the tabernacle.
that is correct.
But if somebody says, "Hey, Jesus, we're going to go this Friday night. We're going to go offer some sacrifices. You want to come?" Does he go?
Well,
"Nah,
No, I don't need to."
I don't need to.
Well, he did.
Well, just give them to me,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we'll cut out the
yeah.
middleman, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we
I'm
do
not-
see him account for the attacks for him and Peter.
Right.
So
Now,
I
there
would,
again, that's kind of civic. That's more civic law, right?
right.
So,
Did he do the ceremonial? I don't see why he wouldn't. Being
right.
Well,
being
it's-
a first century Jew.
except for the sin offering.
Right.
Well, right. I mean, I don't.
There are drink offerings and there are other,
Right.
other
Right.
things that could be offered and with
Right.
gifts of praise and those kind of things.
Right, but we
Just-
don't read, and there again, I think, I point back to Matthew because Matthew points out how Jewish Jesus really is.
Mhm.
I mean, that's, if the theme of Matthew is Jesus is Jewish, you can't argue that he wasn't Jewish,
Right.
as far as Matthew was concerned. So I think, now there again, it's just a hypothesis, but I would believe that if there were any kind of things like that was going on, that Matthew probably would have pointed that out because that would have been a rather Jewish thing to do.
Right.
Now, he gives some examples of people doing things that he didn't particularly like, right? So the comparison of the rich man throwing his money into the thing and making a big deal about it, and the widow throwing her little mite in there, and it didn't make near as much racket.
Right.
But Christ saying that hers was more valuable than his.
And because
Right.
she gave all she had,
Right.
the rich man just did it for the
Right,
show.
Right. So there again, and that's a story that we get pointed out, rather, in Matthew. So I think that if there would have been anything like that, now there again, I think Matthew would have included it. Right. I just think that I think that would have been something that would have been Jewish that he would have pointed out. So. Just like I tend to think that most of the writings are fairly are fairly old, I guess the way to say it. I date most of the books of the Bible prior to 70 AD, just because the fall of Jerusalem isn't, the
Mentioned
destruction.
in- right.
Right, and that would have been something, and now there again, it's
It might not have been pertinent at that particular writing, but something might have been said.
I mean,
about
that would have been an exclamation point to Luke's Acts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no way that he wouldn't have included that, as far as I'm concerned. So, I have the tendency to point to put most of the writings, prior to 70 AD, or at least the traditions of the writings prior to 70 AD.
Right.
I just don't know how, and I know Matthew, if he would have known about that, he would have included that, because I believe the Olivet Discourse is Jesus pointing out that that's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, I don't. When we say the law, generally I think about the Ten Commandments.
Okay.
that
So I'm
that
not
would
the
be
only one who thinks that
right.
way.
Right. I wouldn't put all of the Jewish laws that are in there
In
into
that
that
same
thing. Right, because I
that
think
same
some of
column.
them Jesus himself would have sneered at and saying that
Right.
no, you're putting too big of a burden on humanity. You do these 10 things and you got everything else covered, right? You know, the big 10. Now, which brings up, and I know we only got a minute or so left. You know, there again, I'm always puzzled at the next two, or well, I guess the next verse, 20 there again. I think it's a dig, but 19. 19, he says the least of these commandments. Right. So what is he talking about there?
Therefore, whoever
Ever
relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
I guess puts less weight to one, or less priority or emphasis on one, like you know, the respect your parents does not carry as much weight as don't murder.
Well, and there again, I'm wondering if there again we're looking at, because there's a therefore there. Okay, so and in the Greek the therefore is there too. So so he's making a conclusion here, right? So he's winding up, right? There's a little bit that's wound up here, right? He's saying, therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments. So is he talking about the things that are prior to this and the Beatitudes, or is he actually talking about the 10 Commandments? So I'll be real honest with you. There again, I know what the commentaries say about it, but it isn't obvious to me that he's talking about the 10 Commandments here.
Mm-hmm.
And how could if I break even the least, I'm still a sinner. I'm still condemned. So how could I be the least in heaven? So there's some things with 19 that I'm going to be honest that I scratch my head over a little bit, because I'm not convinced that the commandments there that he's talking about are the 10 Commandments. I'm wondering if he's talking about the Beatitudes, right? And the salt and the light.
I'm going to have to look.
It wouldn't be
research.
jewels in our crown, would it? Refer to the jewels in our crown? Of what?
But he brings up a good point. I just sent all of you a link. Did a little looking up. Did Jesus participate in the sacrificial system at the temple?
Mm-hmm.
And a reliable source there. I just sent it to you.
Okay.
So, guy made it, and it's a very short read. So I read it, and he starts off by essentially saying, because it was a transcript from a podcast, he said Jesus had to be the perfect Israelite, you know, because he fulfilled everything. And so just read that. I think it was.
Okay. Well, yeah, and maybe we'll have a minute to regroup on that next podcast.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But I'm serious. I mean, I don't. You know me.
I have a commentary that was recommended to me by Tim. It's a whole Bible commentary. It's Henry.
Matthew Henry.
Henry.
Yeah. It's like that thick, big old book. I'm gonna go see what he has to say about this verse, because now I'm curious.
Well, there
And
again,
I'll share that with
Right.
y'all, just what it says.
And there again, I'm not sure. You know, there again, taking it just at face value, right? You know, we all get the point. You know, we ought to strive for something higher in our life, right? That we ought to be better than just good enough, right? So I can take those things out of that message without scratching my head, you know, very hard, right? You know, that mine shouldn't be one of mediocrity, right? And there again, I think that comes back to the salt and the light,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
the thing. I mean, there again, even the common, you know, I'm not digging at the Pharisees. You know, I'm not
I'm
poking
talking
them.
to the common people.
Right,
I'm talking
right.
to the man on the street.
Right. So you
that-
should be salt and light, and you ought
Right.
to try to be the best salt that you can be and the best light that you can be, right? Or in the bees, right, ought to be the best of those people that he
Mhm.
describes up there. You know, I should be doing those things, right?
Well, on 19, I mean, this may not be, we'll have to research this a little more. Okay, well, you answer me this. Of the 10 Commandments, which is the most important?
Well, Christ
Christ
gives.
answers that you
Yeah.
love your father and with all your heart and
Love
from
one
your heart, mind, and
another.
soul. No, love
Love.
God the Father with all your heart and your heart, mind, and soul. That covers Commandment 1 through 4. I mean, right there, it covers all 4 of them. You love.
Well, of the 4, which is the most important?
It would be God.
Yeah, I mean, it.
Right.
I mean, it
what I'm
covers.
getting at, well, listen, okay, well, I'm making it too complicated. What I'm getting at is, I think what he said here is that, we'll say these 3 are more important than this one, and we continue to live our lives as this one's not important. That's what we're teaching others. Then it's going to be what it calls it, the least in the kingdom of heaven, is because they're all important, right?
Mhm.
So if we don't see one as important as the other, but they all are important, right?
Right.
Then it's just picking and choosing what you think is best instead of taking everything that God has given us and applying it as a whole to.
Well, but
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus answers in Matthew there that, you know, love God, love your neighbor. I mean, that's a summation, and then he makes a very important aside instantly after that. He said that's what all the rest of them are about, right? So there again, I could take, you know, maybe he had that in mind when he said this, you know, that he knew he was going to be saying that later, and we could tie, you know, those 2 things back together, that, you know, the greater and the least and stuff like that.
Well, it's
But
the same one with the rich young
Right.
ruler when he saw that, because the rich young ruler said, okay, because he told him to take up, sell everything, follow me.
right,
But he said, well, I've obeyed the law, which is he obeyed. He hadn't killed anybody, he hadn't done all that.
Mhm.
But it's the first 5. It's the ones that are directed toward the Lord of making
Right.
him number 1 and all that. That's
Right.
what he.
right. So I mean,
Good.
I would be okay with the fact that this is some foreshadowing. I mean, if if we were to look at these things chronologically, right? So I mean, you know, that they try to pin him down on you know, they try to trip Jesus up, and you know they never can trip him up. But when they ask him that, they're trying to trip him up.
Right.
And what he does is he gives the answer, right, to get out of it, and then he turns it around on it, right, which is what he commonly did with those type of questions too. So yeah, I mean, it could be some foreshadowing, and I'm willing to say that too. But I suppose it's the language there that kind of ties me up, you know. And the fact that the commandments, now there again, you know, we can't tell much about punctuation and capitalizations and things like that with the original Greek, but the commandment part isn't capitalized. And generally, when we talk about the 10 Commandments,
It's capitalized.
right,
Okay.
right. So
What about the old laws what about the guy that picked up sticks on the Sabbath?
yeah,
What happened to him? He's just picking up sticks.
Hmm.
What happened to him?
Well, you know, Jesus told the disciples to pick grain and eat on the Sabbath.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
was thinking about that when we were talking about fulfilling.
So-
But he's,
Well,
and
and
then-
David's guys ate the showbread.
Right, but
Uh-huh,
that-
and from the temple
That's right.
on the Sabbath.
That's right.
right, but there again, you know, I don't know. There's too many things that I think that Christ, understood what it meant, and I think in that particular portion he was talking about the Ten Commandments. But here I'm not so sure that that's what he's talking about. So, and there again, I could be wrong. So I'm willing to listen. And there again, I think that I've been honest with even our listeners with me that there's some things that I scratch my head about and ponder and think about and read and reread and do all of that kind of stuff. But I think that that's what we're supposed to do anyway.
Well, I consider that a good thing, because if you think you know it all and you have all the answers, then
Oops.
yeah.
Well,
So-
we get to heaven, we can have a podcast and
Right.
Have Jesus
Talk about
sit-
all the things we
have
were
Jesus
wrong
sit in
about.
with us and just go.
Well,
Yeah.
I put us into two categories. I'm more of a simpler mind than y'all. I know I was a pastor for many years, but we'll go delve into that. I've taught real deep and then have to, because you have such a plethora of people. But when you press an accelerator on a vehicle, all right, to me, I'm sorry, got him. When I push the accelerator, I expect the car to go. There are some people that when they push the accelerator, they want to know the process of what happens when I push that. What is the next step? And they go all the way through the fuel system, through the electrical system, and all that. And I'm just kind of guy that, hey man, if that thing goes, I want it to go. But there are some that delve deep. I have a brother just like that. He is a real deep thinker. Very, he thinks a lot, and so, but I've always been accused of being a simple-minded type thing. But it's fascinating to me. I love to hear the rhetoric. I love to hear the different ideas and things like that, so, but, y'all smart people. I feel dumb sometimes. Y'all be smart. I don't.
I don't know about all that.
I have
No.
a simple
I
mind.
don't know about all that, but
Well, we'll wrap this up. If you stuck in with us this far,
You're dedicated.
next week we will be
Just
discussing.
wait,
Do what?
just wait next week.
Yeah.
Our next exciting episode.
Next week will be an interesting one. We will be discussing anger, lust, and divorce. And while I have never experienced divorce in any capacity, I know enough about divorce and have seen that the majority of divorce involves either and or anger and lust. So that's the most I know about divorce. But I think it'll be an interesting topic. It's been one I've wanted to discuss for a while, just because it's 53% of our country ends in divorce. So it is a large majority, and then I think it's like 65% of first responders and military end in divorce. So it is a very rampant thing in our culture. So guys, thank them and y'all for being here today. We did run late, but we got started late too. But the conversation prior to was good conversation. So I'll take it. But until next time, we will see y'all next week.
Next week.
Next week.